That's the thing, it's difficult to think of something that they bring up that relates to the conduct of the county in some way that isn't potentially public business. And I also don't want to come away thinking that staff can't meet. This isn't aimed at the staff of the county. The staff positions have access to each other. They can meet, and they can certainly meet with the county commissioners. Individually, they can discuss their public business. That is not what the Open Meetings Act is intended to prevent. But now, I do want to talk about telephone meetings and email meetings, because this has become, particularly email, has become a very difficult issue. Of course, when the Open Meetings Act was enacted back in 1971, we didn't have email, and it really wasn't a lot of the issues relating to electronic meetings. And it's really an issue, but I'm not going to get into it here, with public records, because now email potentially is a public record. But I won't go into that. That's really a different topic. But there is a case didn't involve a county, involved a school district, where the district commissioners were exchanging serial emails. A majority of the governing body were exchanging emails on public business, discussing it. I don't remember what the issue exactly was, but it was a vote that was coming before that body, and the court said that constituted a meeting, because you had discussion that constituted discussion of the issue outside the meeting process, and that was it was an illegal meeting. So email is an issue that you have to be careful of. You can certainly send email back and forth with staff, and it doesn't mean you can't be contacted by citizens by email, but you have to be careful, particularly in a county commissioner forum with 3 commissioners, about exchanging emails that might constitute a meeting. And the telephone could do the same thing, and I'll get that. Just that if you have serial phone calls, again, for city council members, this may be more of an issue, because again, with 3 commissioners, 2 of you are a quorum. But I get the question there. You have 5 city council members, and one calls the second one calls the third one, and they work their way around. Potentially that can be a meeting also. I'm not trying to say here that the clerk can't send information out individually to each one about the agenda for the next meeting and information like that. That doesn't constitute a meeting, and that may be the best way to get information on just a purely informational standpoint. So if the hub there is the county clerk sending one-way communication to each county commissioner individually on a public issue, yeah, that's not a violation. I don't want to say that a county commissioner can't discuss an issue with one of their constituents, but if the constituent is basically being used as the hub here, that could potentially be an issue, I think. You can be present by means of a speakerphone or this video conferencing. I agree, that can constitute a meeting, but that could work, I think, as a positive in one way. If a commissioner can't be physically present at the meeting but would like to participate, you could get that person connected, as you're suggesting, or with a speakerphone, and it would be as if they were present and they could fully participate. So I don't think that is not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. That's kind of using technology to extend the meeting. But there is, in my example anyway, there is a central place where the meeting is being held and the public has been invited and is there. So there's no violation of the act. If it's set up so that there are 3 different places, but they are connected by technology in one way or another, that you can have a meeting, then somehow or other the public has to be accommodated. And the elected officials are right here. These are your county commissioners. And the other groups that it would apply to would be, again, appointed boards that have been established by a legislative act, and like a civil service commission. Those groups are also covered, but not staff. This one-way communication doesn't constitute crosstalk, which is really the risk that you've got going on. Remember, what the Open Meetings Act is all about is the deliberations about what's going to happen don't occur outside the formal process, so that when you come in, all that's left to do is rubber stamp a decision. So just getting information on a one-way conduit, that is not the risk, but the risk is the cross coming back and forth. The issue that it really raises, more this one, I think, than the Open Meetings Act, is public records. And again, I'm not going to get into that, but that has become a huge issue about trying to get access to the emails. When you, on a quasi-judicial matter now, where you're having a public hearing on something and you're taking input, the people who who come into the hearing testify. That becomes the record, and the other people who are present can hear what's being said and respond and comment. I'm in favor of trying to use this technology to make government more accessible to citizens, and I think that's really then what you're suggesting out of the public on a legislative issue, give as much opportunity as possible for people to have input. And at least on a limited basis, it seems to me you could set something like that up where the public comments are received and reviewed by all the commissioners, and it just gives them a better chance to know how the public feels, which I think is what you're suggesting. Use technology to open government up, and I think there's a lot of things being done that way. I'm not exactly sure if your suggestion is. So. But when you say continue conversation, the meeting usually, is closed. At the end of the meeting, they close, adjourn, and then no more comment. That meeting is over and done. The minutes are taken, and so on. So I may just not be clear on how you would exactly mesh that with the other requirements that you have to do, but maybe there would be a way. And I also feel like, and again, I come back to public records because I get so many questions about this, that the legislature really has not got us into the electronic age on a lot of this stuff, and their definitions and their rules, I think, need to be updated, and maybe in that context they deal with some of this, how we could use this technology. Now, a couple things that I want to clarify about the Open Meetings Act too. You can't have conditions on attendance at meetings. Cameras and tape recorders can be allowed by citizens unless they're disruptive. But it doesn't mean that you can't have reasonable rules of conduct. Okay? I don't want anybody to come away thinking that it's a free-for-all at the meeting. This Open Meetings Act says the public has a right to attend, but and it actually does not, clarify my position on this. It doesn't guarantee the right of the public to comment or discuss even at the meeting. It says they have a right to attend the meeting. So the right of the public to comment or discuss depends on the rules of procedure of the governing body, the chair. And they certainly can put limits on that each person is allowed 3 minutes to address the commission, and then with the permission of the chair, they'll get another 3 minutes. That does not conflict with anything in the Open Public Meetings Act, and I'm certainly in favor of public comment and public input, but it can be limited, and it doesn't, the Open Meetings Act does not say that there's an unlimited right of the public to discuss at all commissioner meetings for as long as they want. That's not what is covered by, although I think there's some misconceptions about that. Now, a couple things that are, I guess, a little bit technical, but just to kind of review them again. Under the Open Meetings Act, there's two kinds of meetings. There's what's called a regular meeting, and that is just a meeting that's set, probably in an ordinance or a resolution. It's going to occur the same time every week at the same place. It's set up on a regular schedule. That becomes a regular meeting, and there's no special advance notice requirements, although usually I think the agenda is probably posted that day of the meeting. That's a regular meeting. If it's not a regular meeting, if it's not that regular meeting that's held every Monday at 10 o'clock at the Commissioner Chambers on a regular set basis, then it's a special meeting. And again, I get back to your labels. It doesn't matter whether it's just called a study session or whatever the title of it is. If it's not on a regular basis, it's a special meeting. It can be called by the presiding officer or by a majority of the governing body. They're the ones who are entitled to call a special meeting, and they have to give notice of that. But the groups that have to get notice, there's two groups. Each member of the governing body has to be given notice of the meeting 24 hours in advance. So you can always call a special meeting as long as you have 24 hours advance notice. And then any media that have on file a request to be notified. That varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but if your newspaper, your local radio station has filed that kind of request, they have to be given notice of the meeting. And notice it's 24 hours in advance, so the intent isn't that the media necessarily are going to get published notice of that meeting in the newspaper. A lot of jurisdictions only have a weekly newspaper that's in the area. It is so that they can send a reporter and cover the meeting. So at least they'll have access to the meeting, and they can have somebody there to represent the media and take notes and let the public know what occurred. So those are the two groups that have to be notified. It does not require public notice in a newspaper or on a radio station in advance of the meeting. Again, it's 24 hours in advance. And one thing, this is more technical for the conduct of the meeting, used to be written notice had to be delivered, and they did bring us into a little bit into the newer technology. The notice can be by email or fax, which is the more convenient way than sending a deputy sheriff out to the commissioner's house with the written notice. But that's just sort of a technical point.